Hello, I'm Shawn Baker. I'm the Director of Nutrition at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation based in Seattle on the west coast of the United States. You know, I think of nutrition of the two engines of nutrition. Undernutrition is the attributable cause of 45% of under 5 mortality, meaning if India or any other country in the world is going to take the next great leap forward in reducing child deaths, we have to address undernutrition. Secondly, what is growing increasingly apparent is that nutrition also is the fundamental basis for human capital development. So we talk a lot in nutrition about children who are stunted, i.e. who are too short for their age. But in fact, we're not worried about their physical size. It means that stunting is an indicator that their overall development has been deprived. And so they don't have those populations that have not had adequate nutrition during the first 1,000 days are not developing enough. And so they're always going to be struggling more than populations who are surviving. So nutrition is essential both to save lives and to build the future of families, the future of communities, and the future of entire nations. Within nutrition, and that's why the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we have really increased our efforts in nutrition, working in partnership with countries like the government of India, because we see it's essential for the future generations. We're focusing particularly on the 1,000-day window, so from conception through 2 years of life, a real focus on maternal nutrition, a focus on breastfeeding, and a focus on making sure children from 6 to 23 months are getting a really good, nutritious diet. First of all, before responding directly to that, I want to position the National Nutrition Mission, Poshan Abhiyan, in its context. When colleagues globally ask me, well, what's happened in the last year in nutrition that excites you? I cite two things. The Global Nutrition Summit in Milan, which was a huge moment where actors across the globe, including the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan and Graça Machel, the former First Lady, both of Mozambique and South Africa, led the charge to commit new resources to nutrition. And to me, equally or perhaps even more important is the launch of the National Nutrition Mission. Why? Because India represents at least 1/3 of the world's burden of undernutrition. If we do not make progress in India, if we do not accelerate progress in India, the world will not meet its targets to end all forms of malnutrition by 2030. So personally, I get incredibly excited because India for a long time has had this constellation, all the ingredients in place to make progress. It has a veritable battalion of frontline workers with Angawadi workers, ASHA workers, auxiliary nurse midwives. There are almost 2.5 million frontline workers. It's got policies that are very in sync with global best practice. It has this amazing emergence of self-help groups which are empowering women to be able to feed their children better. To get this level of political attention and a focus on actually making sure all of these schemes work for the people for whom they're intended is a huge opportunity. So it makes me incredibly excited, and I've been very energized by my visit here this week. To me, let me put my response into context. What's the fundamental problem with malnutrition? It's that it's not visible. I think when the public thinks about malnutrition, they only think of that severely emaciated child who needs treatment. But in fact, the burden of malnutrition is huge and almost always hidden. If you're suffering from a deficiency in iron or a deficiency in vitamin A, it's not visible. When you go into a village and every child is too small, that just is the norm. So to make nutrition visible is a huge contribution to society building the awareness of how fundamental nutrition is. So I do think that first, from what I said beforehand, because of the new government commitment to actually delivering on these multiple platforms that can deliver good nutrition, there's a huge reason to celebrate. And having a month that's dedicated to raising the profile of nutrition, I think, is a huge step forward. My aspiration would be that we move from a nutrition month so that every hour people think about nutrition. Because when you think about a mom who's the most essential caretaker for nutrition, she's worried about the nutrition of her infant and young child each and every hour. So let me give you a bit of the context of the 1,000-day window, and I think that was the global breakthrough, perhaps, starting with the 2008 Lancet series on undernutrition, that most of the damage of malnutrition is done from the time of conception through the first 2 years of life. And once that damage is done, it's almost irreversible. But I like to flip that the other side. If we actually lock in good nutrition during that, we've made an investment that that child now is on a road to a healthy, productive life. So it's an incredible opportunity. How is India doing? A lot of room for improvement, but there are huge opportunities. I think globally and in India specifically, there's been a big neglect of maternal nutrition, so the first 9 months. Let me give you an example. In Bihar, the health system is getting tetanus toxoid 2 rates that are delivered through the antenatal clinic platform up to around 80%. But iron folic acid, which is essential for mums, is only about less than 10%. So if we start prioritizing nutrition, we can have some great increases. Similarly, one of the most important things you can do is initiate breastfeeding with 1 hour and exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. Again, going to Bihar, almost 75% of women now give birth in facilities, but only about 40% of women are initiating breastfeeding within the first hour. So here, if we can just make sure that every facility is providing the support necessary to start breastfeeding within 1 hour, we can increase those rates dramatically with just that attention on performance. So a lot of room for improvement, and I think that focus on the 1,000-day window is one of the huge opportunities for India to accelerate progress. I think that data to drive better performance is going to be absolutely essential. And if you look at the story of polio eradication in India, it was all understanding where is the problem, what do I need to do, and tracking it. And just to give a bit of the context in India, India was, for nutrition, in a data drought for 10 years because there was a 10-year hiatus between the National Family Health Survey 3 and National Family Health Survey 4. For a country of this size, for an issue so important of nutrition, not having good data on nutritional status and coverage of nutrition indicators was a real handicap. Now, with National Family Health Survey 4, there's a vast amount of information to understand where the problem is, what needs to be done, and there's a commitment from the government to do these surveys every 3 years. So that's going to be, I think, a huge advantage. There have been some other innovations in data that are quite exciting. Let me go back to Angawadi workers. 1.4 million Angawadi workers out there. I've worked in nutrition all my life. To me, this is a treasure trove of frontline workers. But we've saddled them with filling out physical registers. In some states, 23 registers, other states, 11, weighing 8.5 kilos. So this Angawadi worker who should be focusing on counseling the pregnant mom, counseling the mom who's just given birth, counseling the mom who's feeding her child, no, she's been spending all her time filling out registers. So the common application software is putting that on a digital platform, a regular cell phone like you or I use. It's freeing up her time from all these registers to really focus on what she should be doing. And it's giving her the information she needs to know of whom should I be reaching out to, at what time, for what service. Because if you've just given birth, I want to talk to you about exclusive breastfeeding. If your child is just turning 6 months, I want to talk to you about introducing other foods into your diet. If you're pregnant, I want to talk to you about making sure you go to ANC services, that you eat well, and you take your iron folic acid tablets. So both at the national level down to that frontline worker, I think the data can be essential to drive better performance and focus on what needs to be done. So again, I will step back, and I've worked in the field of public health nutrition for about 30 years, and it's only when I joined the Gates Foundation I started getting engaged in India. And what I find extraordinary here is the opportunity, and that collaboration with the government is an essential part of it. Because in most countries, you're desperately looking for frontline workers who will support moms and their families. Here, India has 2.5 million of them. You want to make sure that food security has been addressed with the government schemes of food distribution through the public distribution system, the integrated child development services, the midday meals. There is a huge commitment to ensure basic food security. The policy environment in India for nutrition is well aligned with global practice. And there is this incredible women's empowerment platform growing even stronger every day with self-help groups. So what has been missing, so here you have a government who's investing human resources, financial resources, policy resources, but the performance, as we've said, and I think this is where we see that collaboration, making sure that these complex systems are really honing in on the key nutrition actions is where we think there's the biggest opportunity. Let me give you an example back to Bihar and the iron folic acid story. One of the reasons there's this big opportunity gap between the percentage of women attending antenatal clinics and the percentage getting iron folic acid tablets is there was a breakdown in supply. By assisting the government of Bihar to fix that supply chain, while we don't have the data yet, our anecdotal reporting so far shows that there's huge promise, huge opportunity for increase. So we've worked a lot with the government hand in hand, both at state level and national level, to really focus on how do you help these systems perform better. We're also thrilled to see that other philanthropies, such as the Tata Trust and the Azim Primji Philanthropic Initiative, are also supporting the government to execute on the government's own priorities. One of the things we're extremely excited about in terms of execution of the National Nutrition Mission is how do you actually help districts develop a strong action plan for nutrition, and then somebody there waking up every day to make sure it's executed. And the Tata Trust is working to, in fact, provide that consultant support to the districts, because that's where everything comes together.